Good evening, colleagues. Let me try again.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm trying to check if we have Prof. Simui. I don't see him. Let's see. Let's see.
Not yet, Dr. Ligi. I just forwarded the link again to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give it.
But I was communicating with him now on WhatsApp. He is joining.
It's gonna join. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe you can start your introductory remarks as he's joining.
Okay, thanks so much. You'll just alert me once he's in. Yeah, once again, good evening, colleagues. For those who have not met me, I'm gonna show my face. I always struggle with the lighting in this particular room. I'll try to turn around for benefit of colleagues that, the lighting is still not good. Apologies for that, but I think it will come. Well, once again, good evening. We are having a webinar. We should have had it last week, but unfortunately, Prof. Simu couldn't be with us due to flu. And I think we are all aware that there is a flu that is doing rounds. So hopefully we'll join. We are meeting today because we are going to discuss, or we're going to listen to Prof. Simui taking us through research philosophies, paradigms, methodology. And the whole idea is for those candidates that are busy with their masters or doctoral, some they are busy with their research articles, book chapters, for us to delve into the foundations in terms of these philosophies, and also try to understand and interpret the world around us. You will appreciate, colleagues, for those that are exposed to field of psychology, we all have individual differences, and the way we perceive the world, it is not the same. That said, research is not about data collection, and let me repeat, research is not just about data collection, but it is about the lens through which we view our own inquiries and the frameworks that we adopt. So a lot of candidates, and I think I was one of them in my early years when I was doing my postgrad at honors level.
Good evening, I hope I'm audible.
You are audible, Prof. Let's see. Yeah, you are audible. Thank you so much. I'm just doing the introduction and then I will give you a chance to take us through. Is that fine?
Dr. Nikki,
I'm wondering why I cannot Prof.
Simui raise a hand so that I make him a presenter?
Okay. Anyone from here?
Prof, are you able to raise your hand so that Prof. Mphahlele is able to give you sharing rights? Let's see whether I can pick you up. Okay, I've just made him a presenter, Prof. Mphahlele. We should be fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, as I was saying, colleagues, we are viewing the world from various lenses, from various inquiries that we adopt. So there are critical questions before Prof.
I'm still not able to hear myself, so maybe I need to log out, log in.
Okay. We can hear you, Prof. I'm not sure whether you can hear us. Okay, he will come back. So as I was saying, there are critical questions as Prof is coming to take us through his presentation. And I want you, especially those that are already at the methodological stage or they are thinking about their methodology. And the first question says, what are the underlying beliefs that influence the choice of your research methodology? And how are those beliefs shape your findings? Second one, in what ways do you think your own biases may affect the interpretation of your research results, because each one of us have got, as I say, the way we perceive the world, our own assumptions. How do those assumptions affect the interpretation of the results? The third one, how do different paradigms, you can name them positivism, interpretism, critical theory, how do those paradigms alter the questions that we ask and the conclusion that we come with? Can you think of a time where you had to shift in your research philosophy or research lens, and that led to a significant change in your research approach or outcomes? As we navigate increasingly complex world, how can we embrace diverse methodologies that can enhance rigor and relevance in our research? And it is this last question that, as we are continuously embracing technology, AI, and so forth, how do we also embrace different methodologies? And it is on these questions that I now want to introduce Prof. Simui to you. And he's no stranger to us, I must say. As I'm sharing on the other screen, I'm just going to quickly turn off the camera just to improve my signal. I see it is saying to me that the signal is not so good. So as I'm introducing him, he is an associate professor of inclusive education, as well as Canon Collins Trust Chevening alumni, who holds a PhD in inclusive education. He is a member of ENET steering group comprising of professionals and academicians in inclusive education with representatives globally. Prof has vast experience working with civil organizations, civil society, focused on education in Zambia. His areas of research or specialization include developing and managing effective open distance education systems, developing and managing effective inclusion system. Currently, he works for University of Zambia and the Institute of Distance Education as the head of programs and development and production, as well as a lecturer in inclusive education. At an international scene, he has been actively engaged in international conferences, colloquia, workshops. Among his accomplishments, he boasts having won prestigious postgraduate team working award in 2007, a courtesy of PwC in collaboration with the University of Manchester. He has won South African Development Community SADC Award as the best presenter research during Open Distance Learning Colloquium in March of 2010 in Gaborone, Botswana, just around us here. He was also honored by the University of Zambia as an outstanding performer and dedicated to duty and full of innovation during 2030 Labour Awards. He serves as a member of advisory board of the Network of Open Educational Resources and Multimodal Self-Directed Learning in Southern Africa, known as NOMSA. And this is not a full, we had to sort of shorten it to cater for the time that we have. Prof. Simui, I just want to confirm now, if you can hear us, you have heard me, and we can also test if we can hear you.
Can hear you.
He seemed to be struggling with sound.
I've put on the headphones. I hope you are able to hear me.
All right.
We can hear you now, Prof. Are you able now to share your screen and take us through your presentations in terms of philosophies, assumptions, and paradigms in research?
Let me try to do so now.
Perfect. And as you are doing that, Prof, I just want to give few house rules to those that are in the session. Let's try to unmute the best way we can. Let's not turn the videos. There will be Q&A towards the end. Otherwise, you are welcome to put your questions on the chat, and we'll be moderating those questions. And later during Q&A, we'll be able to allow you to unpack. Prof will also be responding to those questions. Usually we get a lot of queries for colleagues or a participant asking for recording. This is recorded, and you will have seen on the blab that we shared widely prior to this. For those that are not member of a network, that is why you struggle to access the recording, the presentations, and other resources, including previous presentations and so forth. So we urge you to use the link that was on that blab or advertisement so that you are able to access all the previous recordings. Just after Q&A, I'm going to give a chance to Prof. Mphahlele just to make an announcement in terms of recent developments that we have done as far as the podcast. We did talk about the podcast in the past, but also we make announcement with regard to upcoming conference, which we will urge you to be part of the conference, but the details will follow when Prof is going to take us through. Prof. Simoe, I see you are trying to share, but we cannot see your presentation.
Okay, let me try again.
Okay.
Please do indicate when you are able to see.
Perfect. We see it.
Thank you so much. You alert me when I can almost start.
I think you are ready to go, Prof. I don't know how much time do we need. We usually have 2 hours for this session, and that is inclusive of Q&A.
I'll try by all means to finish maybe 1 hour, 30 minutes.
That should be perfect, Prof. Over to you.
All right. All right. So colleagues, I'm so excited to be part of this. I should have been on a boat cruise right now via Kariba Dam, but because of the import that I attached to this very important activity, I had to forego that luxury for the sake of ensuring we are together on this trajectory. So I guess we have colleagues, not just from South Africa, but across Southern Africa. And so you are welcome. Today, this evening, we are looking at research philosophy, assumptions demystified, research philosophy and assumptions demystified. Let's see how fast we can quickly get into this presentation. So as a way of starting, I hope my slides are moving. Kindly confirm that the slides are moving.
They are moving, Prof. Perhaps
Yes, they are
you can
moving.
just switch off your camera to improve the bandwidth.
Excellent. Thank you so
Perfect.
much. So that will mean I need to. Okay. So I want us to begin with the wise words from this wise man who once lived upon planet Earth. His name is no other than Plato. He says, wise men talk. By an extension, you can also say wise women talk because they have something to say. On the other hand, fools say or talk because they have to say something. Hopefully, as we go through this presentation, you should be able to begin to see the departure point when we ought to speak and when we ought to keep silent. Because wise men or women, for that matter, talk when they have something to talk and not because they have to say something. On the other hand, you see that we can easily forget a child who is afraid of the dark. From the African context, this is exactly what we are accustomed to. We can easily forgive a child, rather, who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life, however, is not about the darkness that we fear, but it's when men are afraid of the light. When men and women are afraid of the light. And that light is what I want to take you into through this cave allegory. But before we talk about the cave allegory of Plato, here is the take home for our presentation tonight. And that hopefully by the end of this presentation, you should be able to enlarge your philosophical repertoire insofar as vocabulary is concerned, and that you should be able to understand philosophical continuum that is at work within the realm of social science research. You should then be able to choose appropriately the right designs and methodologies that fit your study of choice from the philosophical standpoint. And that's exactly what we want to achieve. Now, let me take you quickly inside the cave. Maybe the cave is still a little yonder, just to warm you up. I like starting this way, though. If you can measure it, some people say, then it exists, then it is true. There is a school of thought that describes to this way of looking at reality that if you can measure it, then it exists, then it is true. In fact, they go further and say, if you cannot measure it, then it does not exist. Then it is not true. It does not exist. If you cannot measure it, then you cannot manage it. So the whole purpose of measurement in our social discourse or social research is that we are able to manage the things that surround us. Because if you cannot measure it, maybe it's not necessary to pay attention to it. You cannot measure it, then you cannot manage it. So always reflect on this concept. Each time you hear someone talk about how measurable are your objectives, they are coming from that strand of line of thought. It's all about measurement so that we can manage it. But I want to submit to you tonight that this is just one side of the story. This is not a complete truth as we have been made to understand. Because now we know that even that which cannot be measured does exist. Even that which cannot be measured does exist. In fact, not all that counts in life can be counted. Not all that counts in life can be counted. Think of constructs like love, joy, happiness, friendliness, and the list is endless of the things that really matter. These, I'm yet to find anyone who has managed to quantify them in the 90 kg bags of love, joy, happiness, and labeled them in terms of how heavy or light they are. Much as we try to do that on a Likert scale, but that is not enough to warrant real measurement of this construct, but they truly matter. So this is another way of looking at reality. So there is another set of reality that cannot be measured. So if we decide to combine the two ends, then perhaps you'll discover we are in what others refer to as pragmatism. But wait a minute before we go that far. Let me take you on a journey, a conducted tour of discovery in the Plato's caves allegory, Plato's analog of the cave. So it is said that at some point there were prisoners who were incarcerated in a cave. And there they lived all their lives and believed all they were presented to them as the absolute truth. And so if you care to see what is happening around inside this cave, there are prisoners who are seated, affixed to this wall. I don't know if you're seeing my little cursor. So they are seated, and all they are seeing is the frontage of the wall in front of them. And they are seeing some objects that are painted on their wall. And this is all they can access for the rest of their lives. Now, little did they get to know that actually behind these objects, they think are real objects, are actually a mirror of some fire lit behind them. And there are other people in between who actually hold real objects. And because of the sun light casting on the objects, there are images that are being printed on their walls. And so until much later, one of them had an opportunity to escape out of this cave. As you can see, that person climbing up out until they are completely on the surface. For the first time, have an encounter with the real light. So the sunshine blazing, their eyes unable to see, for some time blinded, but with time adjusted until they're able to make sense out of their environment. And lo and behold, then they begin to make sense that actually all these years, what they were made to understand as the reality was not the absolute reality. It was actually some images as a result of the reflection from the sun or the light lit from the fire. And so they decided to go back into the cave to try to appeal to their colleagues who are still incarcerated. But in trying to do so, unfortunately, they receive stiff resistance because they think, well, it doesn't make sense. All that makes sense is all that is before them. Okay, so this is exactly what it is about education. Others want to submit, but about the issues of research. So we'll see what we will refer to as the reality, as it were, and something else. So let's have this in mind as we delve into our research philosophy and assumptions demystified. Now, here's another famous object that we normally use. You hear constructs like ontology, epistemology, axiology, methodology, methods. These constructs, before we get confounded, all you need to do for now is bear in mind that that's the taproot. The ontology is the taproot system of the worldview of your research, how you view the world. So picture the taproot. So without taproot, a tree cannot stand. So without the ontological worldview of your research, you are yet to start. So you start from there, but then a tree without a trunk equally cannot stand. So that then gives birth to epistemology, which is the how part of how you go around to make sense out of the world around you. So we will talk more about that, but have that in mind. Beyond that, then you have your methodology, the how we should now go around collecting data or generating data, as the case may be. And then the methods, which are exactly the techniques around the methodology that now give us further details, gives us further details on what we do in the how part of collecting or generating data. So this tree may live in your mind. We are still trying to get deeper this far. Some of the constructs that we'll be using as we go in our presentation today, please, if you hear me say data generation, always remember that debate I started with, those who believe in the measurement and those who believe in the immeasurables. So data generation is for the immeasurables, whereas data collection is for those who are so much accustomed to measurements. In other words, from the philosophical constructs, collection conjures an image of an object that exists independent of yourself. And all you do is to collect it because it exists independent of yourself. For generation, we are saying this reality is not independent of yourself. It is part of you. You've got to generate it for it to exist. It is part of you. So these are not supposed to be used interchangeably. They actually have serious philosophical underpinning that inform them. So is the trustworthiness for quali, the qualitative, trying to adjust my set. So trustworthiness for quali, and whereas the validity and reliability will be on the quanti side. Emic to mean an insider, ethic to mean an outsider. So you hear me talk about EMIC, I'm referring to you as an insider insofar as your study is concerned, that you are polluted and you need to be mindful of your standpoint as one who cannot claim to be objective, much as you want to believe, you want to make us believe that you can be objective even when you are already polluted. You are better off perhaps resonating from the subjectivism. Okay, so ethic from the objective part, because you are an outsider and you can claim some independence of some sort. Okay, participants from the quali, respondents from the quanti, theoretical from the quali, to a larger extent conceptual from the quanti, exploratory from the quali, explanatory from the quanti, questionnaire from the quanti, interview schedule from the quali, lived experience mainly from the quali, imagined can still resonate within the quanti as well. Okay, so you hear me talk about all these things, a posteriori knowledge versus the a priori knowledge. Okay, a posteriori mainly on the quali, a priori from the quanti. And all these will find residence in our presentation as we go. So the idea is to enlarge your repertoire so that you are rich in terms of vocabulary, you know your language, that informs your philosophical standpoint. Now, what is philosophy? From the Greek rendering, we note that philosophy, philo, to mean love of wisdom, the study of the fundamental questions around issues of existence. What really exists? How does it exist? What about knowledge, this that we claim to know? How do we get to know what we ought to know? Issues of values, where we position ourselves, reason, how we reason to arrive at what is knowledgeable, the mind, language. All these are fundamental issues that really delve into the realms of realism, truth. What is the reality? What is issues of value? So that's what, in a nutshell, we seem to gather each time we talk about philosophy. So here is yet another contrast that you may want to almost immediately have on in your armory. Paradigm, first coined by Thomas Kahn in 1962. So it's about a set of beliefs that represent your worldview, your set of beliefs. So there will be certain set of beliefs that should inform your worldview, and we'll be delving into those. So your mental model or a framework that informs your set of beliefs insofar as interpreting the reality around you. So each one of these sets of belief will have their attending related ontological, epistemological, and axiological, methodological beliefs or assumptions. Let's call them assumptions. So they will have stratas that must show themselves within ontology, within epistemology, within methodology, and axiology, as the case may be, as you will see in a while. So have that as what we actually mean. Now, here we go. So we remember I first introduced you to the construct we called ontology when we were referring to that tree metaphor, and that the tree, in our context, the ontological part of it was the root or the taproot system part of it. So ontos, the study of being. What does it mean to be? So that's the beginning of any research. If you cannot start your study from the state of being, what does it mean to be? Then you are yet to start. not at PhD, especially if your PhD is truly a doctorate of philosophy and not just most of these fancy doctorates that we see around, devoid of philosophy, yet they want to claim to be doing a PhD, have a problem. So, but your beginning should be situated within the ontology, the state of being. So for today's presentation, for those who have followed me before, you will notice I've deliberately decided to delve deeper into the state of being. And so I'll give much more today than I've ever given. So let's see what we can unravel from that ontological state of being at some point, not far away from here. So within the state of being, the nature of reality, we have three common standpoints within there. And the forerunner to all this is what is referred to as realism. Realism. So there are three subsets, I repeat, within the state of being. There are three of those. The first one, I repeat, realism. So from the realism point of view, all they're saying is whatever it is that you are perceiving as real, it must be informed by your senses. It must be independent of yourself. It must be something that can be collected. It must be singular. It must be objective. And later on, in the post-positivism, you hear concepts of probabilistically way of looking at the same realism, that we can only approximate the truth as it comes. We cannot be absolute correct. So those are much later additionals to positivism beyond what was initially conjured. So that's the realism. What is out there that we can perceive using the five senses. So that must be independent of myself. That should be objective and must result into one. In other words, 1 + 1, as I always give as an example, must always result into a 2, whether you are underground, whether you are in space, whether you are in America, wherever you may find yourself. 1 + 1, under whatever conditions, must always result into a 2 as an absolute correct answer. So that way of looking at reality is exactly what is now referred to as realism. So there's one absolute correct answer to every given problem. We'll try to problematize this as we go and see how this then informs your study. And you'll see that this then speaks to quantitative researchers who believe in inferential statistics, and those inferential statistics, at some end, your hypothesis must be either accepted or rejected. And that's what informs that kind of reality. And that's where that kind of thinking really stems from. The opposing end to this is what is referred to as realism. So the opposite to realism is relativism, as you can see projected on our screen. So from the relativism point of view, within the ontological orientation, we believe that the reality that exists is multiple. The truth about the reality is multiple, and it's subjective. So those who want to study this reality must be ready to embrace subjectivism, because it's multiple. This is what informs qualitative researchers to a point that 1 + 1 cannot always be 2. 1 + 1 can be any number. It could be 11. It could be 1. as we are meant to understand in religious studies, when God created man and he said, the two shall be one. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So therefore, 1 + 1 is 1. That's according to the biblical account of Genesis. So 1 + 1 can be 1. And depending on the context, that could be very correct from the relativism point of view. Whereas from the realism, 1 + 1 must always result into a 2. So have that in mind as a PhD scholar, and we should be able to see you justifying your point of view from either realism or relativism, or a measure of the two we call pragmatism, which is now showing on your screen. I want to believe. So from the pragmatist point of view, we are not committed to any one of the two. Any one of them that works can still be brought on board and be used as such. So it's about finding practical, workable solutions. And if that then entails bring on board any one of these two strands, so be it, and we just go by that. And that's what is pragmatism. This is what gives birth to mixed methodology, whereas realism, relativism, quali, and then pragmatism, mixed methodology. So have that in mind as we move. So that is one branch of philosophy. And so far we have covered the ontological branch of philosophy, the nature of reality. With these sub-branches, the three sub-branches, the realism, relativism, and pragmatism, stemming from the ontological big branch, which is the taproot in our case, going by that analog. So we get to the taproot, the trunk part of our tree, the epistemology. So here, our interest as philosophers in our research project is to understand different methods of knowing. How do you get to know what you want to know? So there are two major standpoints. You can get to know what you want to know either from the objective way of knowing or from the subjective way of knowing. From the objective, it means this knowledge is independent of you, and it is what it is, independent of yourself. So you can go around gathering it, as it were, and you must do so in an objective manner and not a biased mind. And any other person must take, if taken the same route, they should be able to arrive at the same type of knowledge. All right, so that is the objective sub-branch of epistemology in terms of how we get to know what we want to know. And the opposite to that is the subjective sub-branch of epistemology, in which case then we can use the subjective mind to get to know what we want to know. And to do that, we go around gathering. We don't collect. We go around gathering, right? So that is insofar as epistemology is concerned. We'll delve deeper, and then comes another branch, axiological branch. You as a researcher, you must always be cognizant of the fact that you occupy an important role in your research project. And until you understand your role, you are likely to make a serious mistake, because it's either you are an insider, meaning emic, or an outsider, meaning ethic. So if you are insider, it means you are already value laden. Your values are with you. You cannot divorce yourself from your values. You must acknowledge them, but be able to summon the subjective mind as you study whatever it is that you are studying, hopefully. But if you're an ethic, an outsider, it's possible to summon your objective mind. It means you are not polluted. It's possible to claim some level of objectivism. So your positionality, either you are value-laden or you are value-free. Have the two very clear in your mind. Value-laden or value-free. If you are value-free, then it means you can claim to walk the objective road. And perhaps you can begin to subscribe to the school of thought of quantitative school of thought, positivism. But if you are value-laden, and here you want to make us believe that you can be objective, I have a problem. I have a problem. Unless it's mixed methodology. But if it's pure quantity, and yet you want to make me believe you can still claim some objectivism, yet you are polluted, you are an insider, you are an emic, I have a problem from the philosophical standpoint. So have that very clear in your mind. Now here's an addition to what we've never done in the past, for those that have followed me before. So I want to dig a hole around the construct reality, because sometimes it's very difficult to understand when we say, what is the nature of reality? It's very difficult. Now, from the Latin way of looking at things, reality really is a thing or matter. The term means the actual or relating to something or things. From the English rendering, they will refer to the realite, or from the medieval Latin, realis. So you see that over time this has been evolving, but the truth of the matter is, when we say reality, we are referring to a state or quality of being real as opposed to being imagined. It shouldn't be fictitious, it must be false. It must be real. So what is it to be real? So that is from the etymological rendering of the construct reality. And remember, the question of reality borders on ontology, which is your taproot. So let's try to cast it deeper on this from the historical lens. The ancient guru Plato, many years earlier, proposed two levels of reality. There's the ideal reality, meaning eternal, which is perfect and changing truth. But also there is the world of appearances, the physical world, which is imperfect and temporal. So these are the two levels of reality as far as Plato was concerned. So when we say reality, according to Plato, we would always almost go to those two layers. Many years ago, Aristotle, his disciple, later came and argued that reality is found in the physical world, not separate idea. So it must be encapsulated within the physical. In other words, the world around us that is objective, independent of ourselves. That is reality as far as Aristotle was concerned. So things are real because they have a form and substance here and now. So your phone has a form and you can see it here and now. It occupies space. So it's real. It's independent of yourself, insofar as Aristotle was concerned. Again, many years ago. All right. The medieval philosophy, later influenced by the Christian theology, looked at reality from a very different angle. Here, God was now the ultimate. Reality was seen as created by God. The divine mind was considered the ultimate reality. So when we say reality, please have all these strands right in your mind. So realism, or should I say rationalism, versus empiricism much later, still trying to wrestle with the construct of reality from Descartes. They believed that reality is known through reason. Unless you can reason, you are most unlikely to know what you ought to know. So I think, therefore, I am. So for people who say, I think, it means you're applying your reason. To that extent, then what you are confronted with are issues of reality. Empiricism, of course, for you to then, I think, or I therefore, or therefore I am, or whatever it is that you want to arrive at, from the empiricism, it's all about the use of 5 senses. So I always argue with colleagues when they say, how empirical is your study? I say, the word sounds fancy, but actually all you are saying is, did you apply the 5 senses? And you know the 5 senses, being able to see, feel, smell, taste, and so on and so forth. If it does not revolve around those 5 senses, then it's not empirical enough. But that's a different strand altogether, perhaps informed from the realism, mainly from the realism, and not so much from the relativism. So what we see, what we hear, what we touch, these define what is real. But this, again, I repeat, is only true insofar as empiricism, which is a construct within positivism, and it may not so much define what is in relativism. So empiricism, therefore, should not be the ultimate, one and only way to make us believe that then this is scientific, this is something that we can rely upon. So empiricism is not the absolute, as it were. There are many other strands. Now, later, Kantian revolution, or Immanuel Kant, came up with another way of looking at this, but still really revolving around the same. I'm sure you've come across the construct phenomenology, or a phenomenon. That's the root word for phenomenology. But for Kant, he looked at noumenon, a noumenon, that highlighted word here, the noumenon. Here is about things, a thing as it is in itself. So when you are studying, when you go around studying objects, be interested in the thing itself as it shows itself, independent of your perception, so independent of your experience, independent of your interpretation. So that thing that exists independent of yourself, that's what positivists study. And the core to it is the noumenon. I hope this is the correct pronunciation, but you may find other pronunciations as you go. But that's exactly what it is. Very different from the phenomenon, which is really understanding the thing insofar as it projecting itself through your experience as experienced by you. But if you are studying things that independent of your experience, but just focusing on the thing as it is itself, then please consider yourself to be a disciple of Kant, Immanuel, and you are most likely being driven in realism should give birth to quantitative to a large extent and not quali. So we are still within the construct realism. All right, so much later, other scholars came on board who were now interested not in the construct that we're looking at, the noumenon, but the phenomenon. And so far as Husserl, Edgar was concerned, except because he was still polluted by his mentors, who themselves may have been so much immersed in positivism. He still had some layers of objectivism within his so-called subjectivism. So you hear of, you must bracket yourself. So if you're doing Husserlian type of phenomenology, the construct bracketing yourself really is trying to imply that we need to be objective as we study the reality around ourselves. But that in itself shows that we are still slaves of positivism. We are still in realism. Okay, so, but with time, those that came much later, like Martin Heidegger, Van Manen, Marx, and many others, they truly broke loose away from their disciple Husserl. And now we've seen, people who can really respect subjectivism as a strand that informs knowledge. All right, so that's where we are. Okay, so just to recap, so we said the nature of reality comes from that Latin construct, a thing, to mean what is actual. From the Plato way of looking at it, what is actual should mean something that is ideal, something that is eternal, but it must have a form. From Aristotle's point of view, reality is found in the material world. Descartes later says thinking is a proof of personal existence, so you must think, you must apply your logic. Kant added and said reality is shaped by the mind structure. Okay, and then pragmatists say reality is what works best. So that we must always remember. We must always remember. Okay, if that summary is not adequate, so far we've talked about philosophy from the ontological standpoint, from the epistemological and axiological. Now, at ontological, we've said reality can be viewed at 3 levels. That the truth, as we know it, it can be objective truth. It must therefore be singular in nature. So that kind of reality is what is known as realism, number 1. Or the opposite to it is relativism, meaning the truth is dependent on the context, and the truth can carry different jackets and still remain true. That is relativism. And that's what gives birth to qualitative research methodology. When you decide to merge the realism and relativism, then you get into another strand called pragmatism. So realism, relativism, and pragmatism are subsets of ontology. So have your ontology settled when you are looking at your project. Where is it nested? Is it in the realism, relativism, or pragmatism? And that's what then should tell us whether we will have a quantitative methodology, a qualitative methodology, or mixed methodology. All right, so then comes the middle part of this diagram, the nature of knowledge. And that knowledge can be looked at from the positivist or interpretivist. So from the positivist, then you are dealing with the objective type of knowledge. From the interpretivist, you are dealing with mainly the subjective type of knowledge. And then comes the other layer, the axiological layer, which is the value, which shows your position, you as a researcher, whether you are an insider or perhaps an outsider. If insider, then you are value laden. Your values are with you. You cannot remove them from you, much as you want to pretend you can. You cannot. They are part of you. You carry them with you. Or value free to mean you are an ethic, meaning most likely you can go the objective route independent of yourself. So these three branches are very, very important for a PhD worth their name. Now, again, deliberately today, I'm in a mood of sharing good things. I've never shared on critical realism, but I've seen that it's one area that we have not delved so much into yet. In this cave lies some of the new things that we need to uncover. Hopefully we can. Let's delve into it. What is critical realism? So in critical realism, or CR, here we are looking at the belief in a real objective world. We are still in a realism, however, with an understanding that knowledge of what the world is always limited and influenced by social, cultural, and historical factors. The pure positivists, who are the forefathers or foremothers of realism, really, they didn't entertain issues of social, cultural, and historical because they were so much interested in the material objects independent of themselves. But for critical realists, they go an extra mile and embed that layer. So reality exists independent of ourselves, yes, but we can only know it through imperfect human perspectives. Why? Because of all these other layers, social, cultural, historical factors that we may have no control over. So who is the forerunner to critical realism? There's Roy Bhaskar, the British philosopher. So it's a realist theory of science, yes, with a possibility of naturalism, which emerged as a response to positivism, which assumed complete objective and general laws. It has some constructivism in itself, which sees knowledge as entirely socially constructed. So when you merge the two end fronts, you see that you are in critical realism. So it has a bit of strands in the positivism, a bit of it in the constructivism, and that's what we refer to as critical realism. This is not adequate. Let's try to immerse ourselves further. So in critical realism, when we say real, what we mean is the underlying structure or mechanisms and power that causes events around ourselves. So there is the power issue at play when we look at what is real. Example, you talk about economic inequalities, racism, and so on and so forth. So events that occur, whether or not we are able to observe them. Okay, so you think of political uprising, disease outbreaks. Some of these things, you see that there are issues of inequalities, and you need to understand the power effect, the have and have nots. And so you cannot fully appreciate this kind of reality without really focusing your camera on issues of emancipation. If you do not understand how to emancipate the subjugated and what it takes to do so, maybe you are not yet looking at critical realism. So the way they observe this kind of reality, normally they'll focus on issues of protest, videos, and so many other things as they study the nature of reality around issues that fall on critical realism. Okay, so, but underlying issues, social, cultural, historical forces around the nature of reality at play. So from the epistemological point of view, within critical realism, how we get to know the reality, our knowledge here is said to always be theory-laden, shaped by human interpretation. So we cannot divorce human interpretation. Knowledge is fallible. In other words, it's not absolute correct. It's not perfect, pure perfect. There are some elements of error in it. So we need to accept that part. Researchers must be critical. Instead of just looking at the surface, you must delve deeper to see the unseen structures or mechanisms. Okay, so this leads to an in-depth ontological way of looking at reality. So that's how critical realists look at the knowledge, the nature of knowledge, when they are digging around their studies. From the axiological point of view, within critical realism, the researcher is not value-free. You are not value-free. You are value-laden, much as you may seem to suggest some level of positivism, but you are not value-free. So researchers will bring the ethical, the cultural, the political values, and must be reflexive in their approach as they delve into the emancipation journey of the subjugated, so that there is fairness to the unjust systems around. So have that in mind. If truly you are being informed by critical realism and we are unable to see all these stratas, these nuances, maybe you are not doing critical realism, call it something else. Okay, we are almost getting closer to the tail end of critical realism. From the methodological implications, so you must understand the underlying causal mechanisms and structures. You must be able to explain from the abductive inference. Is it inferencing? Of course, you may take on the mixed methodology. You may go beyond the surface, yes, as we have said, to review the hidden. You must be active, you must be reflective, you must be critical in your approach, you as a researcher. So that's what we expect. What else? Here's an example. If, for instance, your studies in the education circles, most likely it may be within the inequalities. So a positivist might measure test scores and correlate them with income. So a construct might explore how students experience inequalities. A critical realist, on the other hand, will have to combine both ends. So they will actually go beyond that and perhaps begin to delve into the unseen structures of the funding systems, cultural norms, policies that are responsible for these inequalities. So the critical realist would collect quantitative data on outcomes, yes, but also qualitative data on interviews to uncover those issues that make teachers bias, curriculum with gaps, and systemic racism, and so many other things that border on power differential. So that's what we expect from a critical realist compared to the positivists and the constructivists. We expect them to do way much more than we do. So here's a little bit of what we've said. If we're to try to compare those three facets, positivist, constructivist, critical realist, insofar as the reality is concerned, from the positivist, the reality must always be measurable because it's objective in nature, right? But a constructist, from constructivism, the reality must be constructed through the meaning that we give it. From the critical realist, on the other hand, the real is complex. So the real must be looked with deeper layers, so it's a deeper lens to uncover the layers that may help us, inform us of those inequalities. So you need to be ready to do that. Knowledge is observable from the positivist. Knowledge is subjective from the constructivist. But a mixture of the two may be better placed perhaps within critical realism. Okay, so these slides you're going to have, for the sake of time, let me just quickly, because it's quite long a presentation and I don't want to lose time. Let me see how much time I have. Okay, I still have some time. So if we're to look at it from the paradigms, the set of beliefs that should inform us within the positivist, constructivist, and then critical realism, if we're to look at the reality, the nature of reality, of course, as I said, is objective and measurable. And of course, from the constructivists, as we said already, there's some meaning that is constructed and we give meaning to what we construct. But that then we will need further delving into. From the critical realists, we need to go deeper, and you see all those other issues that are coming down there that you must exercise as you dig deeper. Let me quickly get to another layer. If you are lost, please, here's the summary of what we've covered so far in terms of constructs. That from the ontological point of view of your philosophy, all we are interested in is the nature of reality. And that reality is what we've tried to problematize and simplify, that you need to look at your nature of reality from three ends, either realism or relativism or pragmatism. And that reality should inform us whether you are going to give birth, your study is giving birth to quantity, quality, or mixed methodology. Then comes epistemology, the strategy for your knowledge, whether the knowledge be objective or subjective. And then comes axiology, which is the value that either you carry or you are free from them. And that position can almost warrant us whether you are an emic, ethic, meaning polluted insider, or perhaps not polluted outsider. And so you can claim some level of positivism, can I say, some level of objectivism, or actually you cannot. You are better off accepting your subjective point of view as a vantage point, not necessarily something that should be frowned upon. So have that in mind. Those are the three key patterns in blue. Before we can even talk about methodology, which is your strategy that then you choose informed by the three earlier buttons that we've already uncovered, whether that be quanti, quali, or mixed methodology. But within each one of those methodologies, we note that there are various designs. So quanti will have its own specialized designs, quali the same, so is mixed methodology. And we must be accustomed to each one of those designs that inform our strategies, and that strategy should respect the ontology, the epistemology, and axiological standpoint. So from the quali, there's phenomenology, among many others. My favorite, much more hermeneutics, looking at the interpretation. And there's a way in which we interpret the experienced lived world. So, but that's not the stage today to talk about issues of the componuality, temporality, spatiality, relationality. It's not the time for us to talk about those, but that's how far we go when we are now interpreting the lived world from hermeneutics as informed by Van Manen. Okay, so if that is not enough, positivism really is one of those strands within ontology that speaks to realism, measurables, and that measurables is an object that is informed by empiricism, meaning five senses. So that is just one strand, and it's not the absolute truth. Paradigms, the worldview, and we've already talked about the various types of paradigms. Constructivism, mainly the opposite of positivism. You are constructing reality because it's part of you. It's not independent of you. So knowledge is shaped by society and the context within which those that want to research on whatever it is that they're researching exists. So you have to construct that reality. Beyond constructivism comes interpretivism, but I've seen colleagues combining or interchangeably using constructivism and interpretivism when the two do not necessarily actually mean one and the same. They are actually different from each other, though they belong to the same family, but they speak to two different facets altogether. All right, so then the post-positivism, which is a much newer construct from positivism. Here they are accepting issues of fallibility. And here you find critical realism that we've already looked at. And Karl Popper is one of those major, leaders. Anyway, maybe this is not enough. You hear constructs bordering on issues of logic. You cannot be a researcher with your name at a PhD level, yet you don't know how to reason. You don't know how to arrive at what you want to speak to or stand for, to justify what it is that you are doing. So there are several types. There's deductive logic, inductive logic, abductive logic, retroductive logic. And we've very much situated ourselves in the deductive logic insofar as the quantitative researching is concerned, and inductive to a larger extent, informing the quality. But also, please be informed, there is abductive and retroductive logic. Let's see if we can get a little bit on each one of these before the bell rings. So from theory, deductive logic is about deducing, as the word goes. You deduce, that's a root. Okay, deductive, you deduce. So deductive logic starts with a general theory. There must be a principle from which a specific hypothesis or predictions are derived. So these then must be tested and observed over time. Then through that process, we arrive at what is the truth and what is not truth. That is the deductive logic at play. So you begin with a theory, you then formulate your hypothesis, and this then is your way of either agreeing with what you gave as a tentative explanation to a problem that lives, or the opposite to what you earlier purported to be the truth, and either accept or reject. So you see that at the point where you get to either accept or reject, you are back to singular truth. You are in realism. So that's where deductive logic is potent and makes sense. Okay, I'm giving an example here just to help us appreciate. So all humans are mortal. So if all humans are mortal and Socrates is a human, therefore Socrates is mortal. This kind of logic is deductive. You are deducing. So think of deductive logic along that line. So in the research, if we're to now apply it, so a student with high self-esteem or students with high esteem perform better academically. That may be your hypothesis, and you want to test that hypothesis. And you've observed over time that students who come from advantaged economies at household level perform very well. Or can I say, actually, I'm now trying to tweak it, but let's leave it as it is presented. Students with high self-esteem perform better academically. So at University X, students with high self-esteem will score above average. That's our hypothesis. So you go around now gathering data to test whether this is holding or actually does not hold water. So data is generated to test this. And from positivist realist paradigm, of course, you may do some experimentation, some surveys, and eventually you will either confirm this or disconfirm it, as it were. So that is pretty much within the province of deductive logic. You are operating using deductive logic. Okay, here's yet another one, inductive logic. So from the observed, from the observations to theory. So you observe over time, then you end up with a theory. When we say theory, I think of grounded theory as a quick way to just getting to this. So from the ground, you're observing, but eventually what you're observing should end up with a theory. And we take grounded theory just as an example. But here at play is inductive logic. So what is it? So inductive logic involves drawing general conclusions from specific observations or patterns rather than starting with a theory. The researcher must develop theories based on empirical data. It must be informed by empirical data, or data as it were. So let's see if we can appreciate the process. So begin with observation, yes. Identify patterns, formulate tentative hypotheses or explanations, then only can you develop your theory. The other one, we're starting with the theory and then approving or disapproving But here we are ending with the theory. So it's almost acting in the opposite end, deductive, inductive. Here's an example. So in a school, 10 schools, female students perform better in English. So 10 schools, female students perform better in English. So female students may generally outperform males in language subjects. So a theory may emerge to explain this pattern, but you are doing so from the relativist. You are interpreting the reality as you see it. So you could then use case studies, ethnographies, interviews. The idea is to generate new theories or insights from the real world. Okay. Is this all there is? For now, yes. Quickly in the abductive logic, in case that's what may appeal to you, abductive logic mainly is informed by the surprises that you may meet. So let's get into it. So from surprising facts to the best explanation. If your study is one such a study that makes us wow, because it's so surprising that things are presented the way they are presented, it's puzzling. Most likely you may be writing on abductive logic. Let's get it. So abductive logic starts with the researcher observes something unexpected, puzzling, then infers the most likely or plausible explanation. This kind of logic is synonymous with Charles Peirce. So abductive reasoning is about creative inference. There is an hypothesis to it generated, but let's see how it works. Let's see how it's, let's imagine there is an observed anomaly that is leading to a surprise, and then there's an explanation to it. Okay, let me see if we can give an example to this quickly. Okay, here's an example. So students from under-resourced schools perform better than those from elite schools in some settings. This is puzzling because the obvious should have been the opposite, that those from resourced schools are expected to perform better than those from under-resourced school, but the opposite is happening. If this becomes the entry point, then truly it's puzzling. It deserves perhaps approached from abductive logic. So students from under-resourced school develop resilience or intrinsic motivation. So that's the hypothesis that we'll need to test as we go to try to test this from the abductive logic. So most likely we may bring on board mixed methods. We may summon critical realism. We may even do interpretations. There will be exploratory in the way we will approach this, maybe, so that we are able to discover the plausible explanation for this complex contradiction in our findings. So that's how abductive logic can be applied. Here is yet another one. I think this should be the last one. The retroductive logic. So we've covered the deductive, deductive and inductive, then abductive, now retroductive. So from retroductive logic, here we are interested in the observed events underlying the cause. We're interested in the underlying events, observed events underlying the causes. So Retroductive logic is a hallmark of critical realism, and already we gave credence to critical realism earlier. So I hope you still remember what we covered. It involves working backwards from the observed events to identify the deeper and thin structures or mechanisms that cause them. So if you are approaching your study from that way, most likely you are applying the retroductive logic in so far as your reasoning is concerned. So what must be true for this? What must be true for this to happen? That's how you ask yourself. So what must be true for this to happen? So at that moment, then it means you are going in reverse gear to begin to ask deeper questions until you get to the root cause of what you are trying to uncover. That is retroductive logic at play. So what logic are you applying? If you were asked in your viva voce and they are asking you what kind of logic did you apply for this study, please don't look lost. You now have enough ammunition in your armory to help defend yourself. I hope it makes sense. Okay, I'm trying to quickly get to this slide. So we have deductive, inductive, abductive, and retroductive. So all I'm trying to do here is to see the starting point, the ending point, the key functions, and how best each one of these will fit in your study and where it makes sense. So this slide you have, and you can still refer to it. So this far now, I think we are free to talk about methodology. So a strategy which is informed by those lenses that we've already talked about: your ontological lens, the epistemological lens, the axiological lens. Each one of these must contribute to building your methodology. And when we reach your methodology devoid of those area layers, then your methodology most likely is not enough, it's not adequate, it's not justified. It is devoid of philosophy. You do not deserve to graduate with a doctorate of philosophy. Perhaps maybe a DBA. If you are doing a business study course program, maybe a DBA can do for you. A doctor in business administration. That's what you deserve to be awarded. And then a doctor of philosophy in business administration. So your strategy. So I think we know pretty much the various methodologies, quanti-quali and mixed methodology, and each one of them with their own designs and their assumptions to each one of those designs. Okay, so you do well to delve deeper. If we're to now tie all these things together, so here is what would be said. So from the ontological point of view, we want to believe that your study is trying to help us be able to know what is out there that exists, what is out there that we ought to know that exists. So what is it? So is it that it has multiple faces to it, and those multiple faces are all correct, even if they were contradictory to each other? So if that is what is out there to be known, most likely what that entails is you are looking at it from relativism, which is the opposite of realism. What is out there to be known, which exists and is only in singular form. and it can only be one absolute correct answer. So if that be the case, that form of reality that you're studying, perhaps you are better off telling us that you're approaching it from realism and not relativism. But if you want to combine the two opposing ends, realism and relativism, what is out there that we ought to know, which exists, perhaps you are better off to look at it from pragmatism. That's insofar as we can go in terms of ontology. Okay, then comes epistemology. What and how can we get to know about it, that which exists out there? How do we go around getting to know about it? So you can either approach it from the subjective or the objective. So that then is an issue of epistemology. These two are the ones that should inform us whether we should begin to entertain quantitative methodology, qualitative methodology, or mixed methodology, the nature of reality. And your statement of your problem should actually answer all these layers. All right, so then methodology, then method, then the sources of data that we can collect or generate as the case may be. This is a summary of what we've just uncovered. Maybe that summary is still abstract. Here's another way of putting it. The way we think the world is out there influences what we think we can know about it. Epistemology. How we think it can be investigated. How? That's the issue of methodology. And the techniques that we summon to help us in our methodology, that's your methods, and the kind of theories and that we think can be constructed about it, and the political and policy stances that we prepare to apply or take on. So this is another way of summarizing that diagram. You've heard of the Saunders onion. It's another way of still summarizing what we've covered. So the outer part representing our ontology is either you are in realism or relativism or pragmatism. I know what I've just said may not be exact replicas of what you are seeing there. Saunders had his own way of looking at it, but I'm trying to apply what I've just said in the earlier slides to what I'm seeing in front of me here. Then comes the other layer in terms of the logic that you can then use either deductive or inductive, but now we know there are other logics like abductive or retroductive logic. All these are at your disposal as a PhD scholar to use. Then comes those other, let's call them approaches or designs, depending on the methodology of your interest. It could be experimental or survey, case study, and so on and so forth, until you get to the inside part of your study. In terms of time horizon, whether it be cross-sectional or longitudinal. And so this can also help us still be able to make sense out of our studies, especially if we understand each one of these layers. So in conclusion, here are the 6 take-homes. So research philosophy shapes your entire study, right from the title to your conclusion. Everything else must be colored from the philosophical lens. Philosophy is not just that little paragraph that we see in your methodology. That is a lie. Philosophy is everything about your study, from the title to your conclusion. So when we say your study is devoid of philosophy, it's not just putting that little paragraph in your methodology. That's not it. You have missed it. So I hope that has remained in our minds. So the core dimensions revolve around issues of ontology, the nature of reality of interest, the nature of knowledge that we seek to generate. That's really epistemology. The values that we carry or we are free of, that really is about your position that you occupy, you as a researcher, and that is axiological branch of philosophy. The third take home from our presentation tonight is that paradigms must guide your approach, be it positivism, interpretivism, constructivism, critical realism, or pragmatism, as the case may be. So these are meant to help us guide our approach. And they must be seen to guide, and we must not contradict the ethos that inform them. The fourth take-home point is that logic reasoning or logical reasoning, be it deductive, inductive, abductive, or retroductive, these must be aligned within your research goal. They must show themselves. And we must see sense why you choose any one of these. And if it seems to contradict what it is that you are trying to champion, then you are not yet reasoning. You are not yet a philosopher. So be critical, aware of these logical reasonings. So the fifth one, we're saying be philosophically aware about your assumptions at all times. Be reflective, and that should help you be able to make sound choices. Otherwise, if you are not philosophically aware where you stand, then your choices most likely are faulty. And we do not necessarily have to begin to prepare for your viva voce. You are yet to get to that stage. Go back and immerse yourself until you are ripe enough. Okay, so but the quicker you do that, the better for all of us. Otherwise, without this, you do not deserve a doctorate of philosophy. Please tell yourself, I need more time. Finally, we are saying choose philosophy that fits your research questions. Choose philosophy that fits your research questions, not just the traditional way of doing things, which is convenient because this is what everyone else seemingly is doing, so that we quickly graduate. Please, that's the sixth point. So as we end our presentation, listen, what Confucius, this Chinese philosopher, say. He says, the man who says he can and the man who says he cannot are both correct. You didn't get me correct. You didn't hear what Confucius is saying tonight. The woman who says, I truly can understand philosophy and apply it in my study. And the woman who says, I cannot understand anything this far, despite all the effort given by the banks of the Lake Kariba. This presentation is being made just by the bank of Lake Kariba. You are saying, I cannot understand anything. Both of you are correct. So the difference is your mindset. If you think you can, you are right. If you think you cannot, you are right still. So please begin to reprogram yourself. Otherwise, you remain where you are. So let's attune our minds. Because the same Confucius says, the man who asks a question is a fool for a minute. But the man who does not ask is a fool for life. In my local native language, we say, Kuivola, Casawelo. He who asks is not what's the opposite of being wise? A fool. He who asks is not a fool. That's what we say in my local language. So the time has come for you to ask your questions. I submit to our moderator.
Wow, wow, wow. Prof, colleagues, aren't you moved, aren't you fascinated, aren't you intrigued by the wealth of knowledge that we hear from Prof? Prof, you can see on the virtual platform, I see a lot of hearts, clap of hands, appreciation. And I think that's how colleagues have actually now connected with your presentation. And I think towards the last end, you did connect with what you are saying to say you are demystifying. And I think a lot of colleagues were always confused as to how do I link my research questions with the choice of paradigm and methodologies. Colleagues, this is where we're going to take questions. I already see hands, Prof. I also want those that can access the chat to also post their questions on the chat. The first one is Chico. If you can open your mic, ask question. If it can be short, we will appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Chikobola Musaka. That is, I'm doing a study that is involved with phenomenology. And I want to ask, because I've been following every time the prof that is presents, I think I've been following him because I usually get some of the insights from him. So my questions has to do with the research philosophies. I want to know whether what I did is correct. Because in terms of research philosophies, there are some that talk about positivism, and then there's what they call post-positivism. So I discovered that for some researchers, they would locate the study that is in the post-positivist, that is philosophy, which is after positivism in short, and then they go further to locate it in the interpretivism and constructivist, that is paradigm or sub-philosophies in short. And then they go further depending on whether they want to interpret meaning or they want to look at how meaning is constructed. Then they either locate it in the interpretivist or constructivist, that is a paradigm. And then from there, now they go further. Now my question that I want to ask is it correct to start that is from the where you start, where you locate your study in the post-positivist philosophy, which has to do with qualitative, that is studies, for example, that is phenomenology? I think that is a question that I have.
There you go, Prof.
All right. So let me not generalize, but perhaps specifically address you as a phenomenologist. What kind of a phenomenologist are you? Because within phenomenology, there are many strands.
I'm a hermeneutic phenomenologist that is based on Martin Heidegger's philosophy.
And you know that Martin Heidegger rebelled against his teacher, Husserl, Husserl, the Husserlian, is against the Husserlian way of looking at phenomenology. You are aware of that, right?
Sure, Prof.
Whereas the Husserlian would always make us believe that you need to bracket yourself for you to reach that epoch. Martin Heidegger says, no, you don't need that. All you need is your subjective mind. And you must respect your subjective mind, as it were, as you interpret your lived experience. Of course, he ended at the time as well as the being, but others have added to that. I hope in your interpretation, you are not just ending at the being. What is there? What does it mean to be and the time aspect of it? That's as far as Martin Heidegger went, but others have added to that. They've added the relative, the nature of the people that surround us. That for you to experience a phenomenon, normally we have people around us, and these have an influence over what we are doing. But also issues of temporality, of course, that's the time aspect, but the space part of it. So I hope you've taken on board the jacket of Max van Manen. Are you using Max van Manen?
So, Prof, after I read so much, I don't know, maybe there you might also guide. After I read so much about Heidegger, I think I discovered he went in line with the Hans Gadamer, especially in terms of how to do the interpretation. So in terms of the interpretation part, I didn't go with Van Manem, because after reading so much on philosophy, I discovered Van Manem sometimes straddles between hermeneutic phenomenology and transcendental. So there I think I became a bit confused, because in terms of the actual philosophy, like coming from the top, he's not really specific whether he falls under Heidegger or he falls under Husserl. There I got confused. So I just went with that is the Heidegger and Hans Gadamer in terms of going to create the framework for interpretation, where you look at the fusion of horizons and the others.
So let's look at the title itself of your study. What is the title of your study?
Okay, the title of my study is Understanding the Meanings of the Lived Experiences of Smallholder Farmers with the Digital Technologies.
So these smallholder farmers with the digital issues, I believe they have a body. I believe they have the time horizon within which they are experiencing that phenomenon. I believe they have relations around themselves. I believe they occupy space. So if we're to write on Max van Manen, using those 4 quadrants, it will be very easy to decipher meaning behind what we are seeing as their lived experiences. But if we were to just end at the body and time, insofar as Martin Heidegger is concerned, you may leave out a larger chunk that may be very informative to your study. To that extent, that's why I've fallen in love with the Max van Manen, just insofar as opening up our interpretation canon. That's all. You can decide to do that and you'll still be justified.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Prof. Yeah,
maybe let's leave it there, because if we go to the other end of your question, we'll completely confuse everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I must say I had philosophers having conversation there. Well done, Chico, and all of the best. Wilson, try to be short if you can. Unmute. Okay, while we're attempting Wilson, Prof, there is a question on the chat from Advocate Nzaluba. Why is critical realism situated within mixed method research and not qualitative research methodology? And the other one, in the interest of time, why is it that most research seems to be deductive and not inductive? Would any theory emerging from inductive perspective by postgraduate student be considered acceptable to research community? Those are 2 questions to reflect, Prof, and then we can give Wilson a chance.
Sorry. Why is critical realism situated within mixed methodology and not qualitative?
Yeah.
You see, there are 2 aspects to that. Within critical realism, they are still within realists. These are realists, except they are critical. And we've discovered that realism is a subset within the realism ontology. Remember, the 3 subsets at ontological level is the realists, the relativists, and the pragmatists. So each one of these families have children. So realists are what gave birth to positivism. Of course, it gives birth to quantitative methodologies. So realists, when you see it, the belief system is such that we have this reality independent of ourselves, and it must be approached from the subjective point of view. That's what realists is about, except from the critical realists. They're saying, wait a minute, whereas it's independent of ourselves, but you see, we need to approach it with the historical, social, cultural lens. At that level, then there's some element of relativism. Now, you are already hearing relativism in my submission. At that moment, you cannot do without mixed methodology, because both realism and relativism are being fused together. That is what gives birth to pragmatism. And that's why the bulk of critical realism will always ride within mixed methodology. I hope that answers you.
Perfect. I saw thumbs up, Prof. It means you are good. Wilson, let me try you for the last time. Are you able to unmute? Okay, we're not winning with Wilson. Prof, I cannot thank you enough on behalf of our network as we are moving by mantra beyond the borders. We'd like to appreciate the insight that you gave us, the knowledge that you have shared with us. And I think you have practicalized the choice on research paradigms vis-a-vis philosophies. And a lot of students, candidates here listening, they are going to be able to apply what they have learned, the key takeaway from your webinar. You are a friend of the network. We're still gonna, knock at your door in the future. And our endeavor, as we always say, is to ensure that we impart the knowledge that we have with others so that we are able to have better researchers in the future and as we going forward. Colleagues, what you see on the chat, and I've also shared on the chat, it is the feedback form so that we are able to also reflect later as the organizers and also by extension engage Prof in terms of for him to see the impact that he has done. We'll ask just 2 minutes of your time to give us your feedback based on what you have learned today, but also is for us to say, how do we improve going forward? There is a question that asks, what topics should we cover in the future? And as we're doing that, there will be few announcements immediately after this. Prof, I will not do justice. I don't think we answered Dr. Badaru's question, unless then I might have not been attentive. Pardon me. Why is it that most researchers seems to be deductive and not inductive? Would any theory emerging from inductive perspective by a postgraduate student be considered acceptable in research community? The last question, is it possible to get contact details of the knowledge for further engagement? Of course, we'll share those advocate. I think just reflect on Dr. Badaru's question, Prof.
Thank you so much. So why is it that we seem to be highly influenced by what was the question again? Much more on the realists than relativists. I hope I'm paraphrasing the question.
Yeah, why is it most research seems to be deductive and not inductive?
Okay.
Any theory emerging from inductive perspective by a postgraduate student considered to be acceptable to the research community?
Well said. And remember the mantra, you can only give that which you have. I repeat, you can only give that which you have. I'm yet to find one who is able to give from without. So the forerunner to all this is the realists, where deductive logic is their tool of way of doing things. And so the bulk of those that came after the relativists and that's where qualitative research belongs. It's really reactionary, much as we say not all that counts can be counted, but those who believe in the countables seem to have taken the center stage. It's for that reason you hear, even when students are doing their Viva Voce, a student is purely in qualitative, but they will still be forced to answer the question, how measurable? Okay, I hope we are still together. Okay, at least I can still see
Yeah, we
some
are.
faces. Okay.
Yeah.
So you hear a question that insinuate that you need to measure, your objective must be measurable. It's because of the influence of positivism. And we don't seem to understand that we've all been polluted and contaminated. And we don't even understand that there is a clear line between deductive and inductive logic. Now, can inductive still inform our theories and be acceptable? I gave an example of grounded theory. It's very rigorous for you to arrive at a theory. But if you truly follow the rules as given in grounded theory, I'm sure it should be acceptable enough because it's really watertight and robust in its way of doing things. But if you are going to come up with a theory devoid of the watertightness that we see in grounded theory, and yet you want to make us believe you have come up with a theory, maybe we have a problem with that. Maybe you are better off calling it a suggested, tentative framework for that matter, and not a theory maybe. Okay, we hear people talk about models from qualitative, but you look at the rigor applied to arrive at the so-called model, and they are using inductive logic and not deductive. There are problems. So we need to appreciate the rules that govern the science of deductive and inductive and live within those rules. And you'll see that you should be able to convince quite a number of us that truly we can accept your theories as it were, if they are coming from the ground, from the grounded theory. That's my short way of answering that question. I hope I've attempted to answer it.
Thank you so much, Prof. I'm looking at the time and I see Simbarashe's hand has been up. In the interest of us sharing knowledge, Simbarashe, can I give you a quick opportunity to ask your question, then we can move to announcement, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Good day, colleagues. Good day, Prof. My name is Simbarashe, and I'm doing a master's, so I'm a notch lower than the people doing the PhD. But anyway, I wanted to ask, how do I present my research paradigm in my research proposal? Because I'm still working on my research proposal. I don't know where to put it or how to present it. Do I begin in the introduction? Do I put something about it? Or do I wait to get to a specific section to start speaking about the research paradigm I'm going to talk about? I'm doing a mixed methods research, and the paradigms that I'm using are pragmatist as the overarching framework, combined with interpretivist paradigm. Am I in the right direction? This is one part of the whole research proposal that I've found extremely challenging, because I don't know how to present this in a proposal. I hope my question makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Simbarashe.
Yeah.
It does a lot. So what informs your paradigm is not just agreeing within yourself that I'm going to do a mixed methodology. Therefore, this is a pragmatism approach. And then you go further to pick one of those designs within mixed methodology, be it concurrent, sequential, or convergent, whatever it may be, really for me is the nature of the reality that you have at your disposal. So go back to your statement of your problem. What kind of reality is this that you are trying to interrogate that exists? Is it independent of you, or actually is within you, within the research community, or is independent of the research? So when you answer those questions, then you begin to appreciate whether this can safely be within pragmatism, or actually is the construct of relativism, or truly realism. And when that is agreed upon clearly, then you can talk about your methodology. So you haven't told me the title of your study, you haven't told me the statement of your problem, so it may be very difficult for me to answer. Until those are clear and we agree, it may be very difficult for me to comment. But have that in mind. The nature of your reality at play, as manifested in your topic, as informed by your statement of your problem, should be the beginning point. Then we can answer those questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, let's give Prof a round of applause, appreciation. We really appreciate your time, Prof. And for those that will have learned something, and I've seen from the feedback that you do promise that you are going to apply what you have learned in your own respective work. Let's do that. And all of the best for those that are still going for examination and so forth. I just want to check on the last part. What would you like to be covered in future? I see a lot of methodology, bibliometric analysis, philosophical. Yeah, so you can see methodology is the one that is sort of topping the list here. And I think this sort of brings me to another part of announcement. Where is it? Just a second. So the next workshop, it will be facilitated, as you can see on the schedule. The schedule is already in the channel for those that are already members. I saw 39% of you who are attending today indicated that they are not members. Do register. For those that are on a WhatsApp group that we created, we did share a link on how to register. Otherwise, you are welcome to contact either of us, myself, Prof. Mpatlele, Dr. Selepe, Prof. Mbati, then we can assist. So on the 3rd of July, as you know, we meet every second week, Thursdays or so. We're gonna be led by Prof. Modise. I saw her earlier in the room. She's gonna be now taking forward what we had today in terms of research approaches and design. So for those that indicated interest in research methodologies and so forth, don't miss this session. We'll also share the Blair accordingly on various platforms that we have. So our network is growing, colleagues, and we really appreciate it. And we'll also like to hear from you in terms of how do we improve going forward, because as I said, ours is to ensure that we share the knowledge with one another and we build communities of practice in this knowledge sharing. With that said, allow me to call on Prof. Mpatlele to have few announcements and then we can close. Prof. Mpatlele.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jani, and thank you so much, colleagues. I've seen 70 at some stage, and we really appreciate the growing of this. And Prof. Simui, I don't even have words to.
Apologies, Prof. Mpatlele.
Giving. Our candidates, they are going to know what.
Prof, sorry, Prof, to interject you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
There seems to be a disturbing sound coming from your side. I'm not sure whether it is a microphone. Let's try again.
Am I now
Much better.
all right? Okay. Okay, because I was using a AirPod, maybe. All right. Thank you so much. I was saying, Prof. Simui, listening to your presentation always is really amazing. How you so knowledgeable about research philosophies and paradigms. I wish maybe during our conference you can be there just to address presentations that might be lacking on that part. So my announcement is regarding the conference and the podcast. As Dr. Jano has mentioned, we already having 3 episodes. Are they 3 episodes? Yeah, 3 episodes of the podcast, and we want to launch the first one, and we're going to share it in the social media platforms, and we are gradually introducing mixed methods to this platform, because we've noticed that majority of candidates, it seems they are not confident to take up mixed methods. We don't know whether it's supervisors who are not encouraging candidates, or it's just candidates who are not so confident. So we interviewed one of the experts who is also the president-elect for Mixed Methods Research Association, which is called MIRA, Mixed Methods International Association. And she has been with MIRA for many, many years. And we want to introduce gradually mixed methods through this podcast. And if maybe time allows, we might have one of them presenting in one of the sessions. Being a member of Mixed Methods, I've learned a lot. We might think that just combining the qualitative and the quantitative is enough. It is not. And I believe also Prof. Simui have knowledge about mixed methods, and would love to hear from you one day about it. So colleagues, we have a website. We are going to also launch the website for this network. We're going to share the link with you so that you can access the podcasts, you can access the recordings of the previous sessions. We're going to also have our YouTube channel where all these presentations are going to be accessible. I'm not sure whether we're going to make them public or unlisted. That will be discussed by the organizing team. I don't know if there's something I've left, Dr. Janu, but the date for our conference will be beginning of October. Why we choose beginning of October is because exams are going to be starting. So we are encouraging our candidates and supervisors to start preparing your abstracts. Remember, when we do research incubators, we're saying you present whatever level of your study, but during the conference, you should at least have completed your proposal so that you are able to present the full study from the beginning to the end, even if it's a proposal. And again, if you are doing any chapter, you can be able to present in the conference. But if your proposal is incomplete for the conference, I don't think you will gain much from the feedback. So that's why we are pushing students who are doing their proposals to say, by the end of August, just ensure that your proposal is ready so that you are also able to present in the conference, so that next year when you start with the chapters, you know you are on the right track. We're going to issue a flyer also in our WhatsApp group for the conference. And this month of July, the next month, the month of July, we are supposed to have 2 research incubators. Also be prepared. we're going to issue the links where you upload your abstract if you are interested in presenting. For Research Incubator, remember, you present any, even if it's a section in methodology, or a section in proposal, you can present. Colleagues, if there's something I left out, please, you can add.
I think you covered, Prof. You covered them all. Hopefully the candidates have heard your message. So with that said, colleagues, allow me to wrap up the session. Thank you very much for those who have been with us since 5 o'clock. It is now 7:10 from South Africa. For those that are in other parts of the world, do have a blessed day ahead. Good evening, and we will meet again. As Prof indicated, be on the lookout. We are trying to move with the trends and digitize some of the content that we create from this. But also those who would like to share their knowledge, be presenters, you are welcome to indicate, and we will gladly add you on our schedule of activities. Once more, Prof. Simui, we cannot thank you enough. We will share the feedback with you. So far, it looks good. Blessed evening there in Zambia, and we will meet again. Good evening, colleagues. We are now adjourning our workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I like that sound, Prof.
Oh, I'm in
does.
Zimbabwe.
Bye.
Oh, you are in Zim.
I'm in Zim by the banks of Lake Kariba.
Oh, now I understand.
Yes. So tomorrow I'll be going back to Zambia.
Oh, okay. No.
Yes.
How
Yes.
has Zimbabwe been in the last few days?
Well, it's been okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think other colleagues, they just want to hear us talking. We're just gonna abruptly close this. But thank you so much once again. We will keep in touch.
Sure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I think you can just email both myself and Prof. Mphathele your presentation to share with other colleagues.
I will certainly do so just now, almost immediately.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Prof. Great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Travel safe back home, Prof. Simui.
Thank you, my sister. Thank you.
Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm going to end the meeting for the sake of the recording.